Thank you and welcome to another episode of Geek U.S.A., an all things nerd podcast where the Trekkie meets the Techie. My name is James.
And my name is Carl.
And this week, we're going to be discussing the music of Winger. Unfairly maligned by the masses in the wake of hair metal's heyday, Winger was, for all intents and purposes, the thinking man's hair metal band. And while they rose to prominence in the late 80s via constant airplay on MTV and a string of top 40 singles, Winger was much more than a singles band, a fact cemented by their third album, Pool, which while released to little fanfare back in 1993, remains one of the genre's best-kept secrets. After taking most of the 90s and the early 2000s off, Winger returned in 2006 with 4, and has been at it ever since. Here is, Carl, this week we are going to be talking about Winger. There are a few bands that have been the source of as much ridicule as Winger, mostly unjustly so, in my opinion. Carl, when I say Winger, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
The first thing that comes to mind is Madeline or 17. It's like probably their two biggest tracks. There's
so
this
not
guy,
Beavis and Butthead.
No. There's this guy out here on a local radio station named Chris Merrill, and he's got one of his staffs named Madeline, and she goes out on the street and she does like the kind of like the Jay Leno thing. We're just gonna find random people and ask questions. They always play that song. It's like always stuck in my head.
Oh God, that is such a great song.
Yeah, it is. I love it. One of the best live shows I've ever seen. Like one of the most, like, especially in his age among his peers, like one of the most well put together, well practiced, perfect sounding live shows ever.
Yeah, I mean, consummate professionals, all of them, a super talented band. I've grown to appreciate Winger more and more as I've gotten older because, as you like to say so often, they are my kind of cheddar. They are the cheese that I like. So, and I don't really, I mean, that's not to say that they're, a joke band or a cheesy band, but just they combine these elements of prog with like kind of a tunefulness that I appreciate and I'm a huge fan of. And I think that where bands like Dream Theater, even to a certain extent, but a lot of modern progressive bands, they kind of lose me a little bit because everything's so dire and serious. And, you got a song in there, but it's surrounded by 10 minutes of like gobbledygook, and Winger just kind of gives you the opposite. You get this amazing pop song with just enough twists and turns to make it interesting for repeated listens. They're just Kip, and it all goes back to Kip Winger. The man's a genius, and I can't say enough good things about this band. I've been a fan of this band. They're one of my earliest musical memories. So Carl, the song "Miles Away" was a big hit for this band, and it was such a big hit that they had a video on MTV that played constantly, and we got MTV. Probably when I was 8 or 9, we got cable, and this was one of the first videos I ever remember seeing was the Miles Away video, and the melody just stuck with me, and dare I say, Winger was the gateway to like all things, pop and metal at that point. And, of course I was a teenager and Winger wasn't cool, but I didn't care. I liked Winger. I listened to Winger. When they released Pool in 1993, I was like, holy crap, this is the best freaking album ever. When Kip Winger started releasing solo records, I was all over it. Friends came and went, people laughed, people sneered, but I'm still a fan of Winger. And I'm glad to hear you are too.
You remember how I got into Winger, don't you?
I would love it if you would tell the story.
This was, I don't know, iPods, like the iPods with a hard drive in them. There's probably people listening who don't even know what I'm talking about. But I was shopped. You and I, we worked at this at a place that sold like used music and electronics and things like that. And I was shopping for one. And you were replacing yours, and so you just gave me like a 30 gigabyte like iPod and had like, I don't know, not your like entire library of music, but it had a lot of freaking music on it. And I had like Winger's like entire catalog. And I'm like, this is stupid. And I was trying to figure out, how to like pull songs off of an iPod so that, I'm sure that's not legal, but pull them off the iPod so like I didn't lose them. And so I did that, and I put a lot of stuff back on. I said, forget the Winger. And I came into work making fun of you.
You said, and I quote, "Man, thanks so much for that iPod, but it's full of Winger, and I can't figure out how to get that crap off of there."
Yeah. And so the carless adult who rode my woman's bike to work, yes, it was a woman's bike, rode my woman's bike to work, called you a loser, and made fun of you for having Winger on your iPod. You just kept telling me, no, it's awesome. And then Danny O'Grognick, I think, worked at the time. And he's like, no, it's awesome. I'm like, okay. So I start listening to Winger. I was like, this is freaking awesome. Like, I was listening to Winger, and I didn't even slide any like farther gay on the Kinsey scale. Like, it was great. I was.
So what was it though? Was it just the perception of them that had you resistant to giving them a listen? And then what was it like? Do you remember the song that like turned it around for you?
Well, it was the whole Pull album. Here's what happens. Everybody is stupid. Like, everybody's born with a certain level of stupid where you need something to make fun of for whatever reason. Like, everybody does that. Some people will hit like an event. Like, they'll run into something where they're like, which kind of reminds them that that's a stupid way to look at stuff. And like, you don't always have to have something to think is cheesy or stupid or make fun of just because. And that was the only reason. Like, it was just a because thing. It's like you see Metallica throwing darts at Kip Winger's face. You see Stewart from Beavis and Butthead wearing a Winger shirt, and you're like, great. For some reason, Beavis and Butthead are cool role models, so we're gonna make fun of Stewart because that makes a lot of sense, right? Mm-hmm. So, that's kind of it. And then I kind of had my growing moment. No longer, like after that, no longer did I just, like make any, it's kind of applies to anything, but I kind of learned a lesson that like, hey, you don't always have to have something, to down or to make fun of. Not everything, you can just be indifferent to stuff and just not know what it is until you've heard it. So, one of the biggest mistakes I made, I think I lost a good 5 or 10 years of awesome Winger listenership, but that's okay because our catalog's not that big. So
yeah, I mean, they stand kind of head and shoulders above a lot of the other bands in terms of like how much they attracted ridicule. Carl, I was, I won't say I was a defiant kid, but I definitely had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I'm sure a lot of listeners can relate. I went to a private school, and my family was poor, so I went to school wearing old clothes that didn't fit. And I had to pack my lunch every day, and all these things that don't matter now looking back, kids would make fun of you for constantly. So add on top of that you hear somebody talking about, a new record, and like this, the music that's popular at the time is like Salt and Pepper and Gin Blossom. I mean, just like the worst, most benign radio rock. And then I'm like, yeah, Winger just came out with a record. Why did I say that out loud? And it just starts pouring on, but I didn't care. It was almost like, me being the stubborn little defiant brat that I was. It wasn't like I wanted people to not like me for that, but it was like I was proud that I liked what I liked, and I was so proud of it that I didn't care. I wasn't going to stop talking about something I liked because it wasn't cool or popular, and that has served me well as a music fan because, as we've seen, things come and go, but like good music stands the test of time. And Winger definitely, as we're going to get into here, not only did they have a brilliant beginning to their career, but they had an amazing resurgence, the likes of which most bands from their era wish they could have had. So, Carl, I want to dive in real quick to the beginnings of this band. So, Winger starts and ends and is all things Kip Winger. So Kip Winger, a bass player, a guitarist, an amazing singer, began life as a session player back in the mid-'80s, and very famously, played with, his big break was playing with Alice Cooper. He played on the Constrictor album. He played on Trash, which had Poison and Trash on there, like 2 big hit singles. He toured with Alice Cooper. And all the while he was doing side work, he was writing and recording and tracking and doing session work. He was just trying to, make it big. He was from Denver. He had moved out to the West Coast. He was just doing what a million other musicians had done. The difference is Kip Winger was a true talent. And Beau Hill, the producer who had ended up producing the first Winger album, saw this. And eventually, one thing led to another. I'm going to cram a bunch of history into like a couple sentences here. Kip Winger, Rod Morgenstein, and Red Beach all kind of crossed paths. And eventually, on the strength of demos that were being recorded and on the strength of his reputation, Winger got a record deal. Kip Winger did. And the band decided to go in the studio and record with Beau Hill. Now, a member of this mix that we don't really talk about much now because he's only really on these first two records is Paul Taylor. Paul Taylor was the fourth musician. He was a keyboard player, played a little guitar, and was a great songwriter. So the band goes in the studio and records the first album, which, up until the 11th hour was entitled Sahara. And it comes out, and it's 1988. Kip Winger is a sexy-looking dude, and, they make a bunch of videos, and it just happens, man. The song Madeline, the song Hungry, the song 17, the song Headed for Heartbreak, all of them huge singles, videos on MTV.
Real late, too. Way late to the 80s game.
Way late to the 80s game, but they had been in the scene the whole time. It was just like they've
been working like crazy. Yeah.
So, Carl, this record comes out, and it just blows doors down, and they're right up there, on MTV. Like, I'm watching MTV as a kid, and, it's Bon Jovi, it's Skid Row, it's Winger. It's Poison, it's Winger. It's, and it just, they're in that mix. Tell me about the self-titled Winger album. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, it's pretty much as 80s as you can get as far as like 80s riff rock. It's and again, kind of like a little late to the game. Like, it feels like an album, from like 1983 is what it really feels like. But it's not. It's I don't know how else to say. It is a little unique from a lot of like the because it's not cheesy like Nelson. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
But it's not. But it's like not tough guy riff rock like,
it doesn't have any muscle.
Motley Crue. No. So I mean, it sits somewhere between. I don't know. Kind of sits somewhere between Slaughter and I don't even know what the other end of what I'm trying to say is. But it's got a halfway okay cover of Purple Haze. But yeah, just you're talking real solid riff rock with real insanely solid lead work from Red Beach. And yeah, Morgenstein's a beast. I mean, that guy's all over the place with what he does career-wise. But fantastic album. I mean, it's a collection of some of the best like riff rock I can think of.
Yeah, and so what really happened for the band at this point was when you got signed, hair metal had become such an institution. It was saturating the airwaves. If a rock band got signed, there was a formula. You went in the studio with the producer and you did what he said. And so, even though those guys were consummate professionals and had played and had experience, this was the formula. You could almost, any of these like, White Lion, Steelheart, even Tesla, any of these bands, like their first records were essentially the same, identical clone copies. As long as the singer looks pretty, get a video on MTV and we're going to be good. The band was fine with it, and the album is what is. The singles are great. The non-singles are fine, but it's not stuff I go back to. But I still think like Headed for a Heartbreak has an amazing vocal on it. Like Kip Winger had pipes, everything was there. But the band goes back in the studio with Beau Hill, and Kip Winger is already beginning to flex his artistic muscles. He's working while they're touring on the first record, and the song that would become Rainbow in the Rose, the song that would become In the Heart of the Young, like he's writing a lot on the piano, which he has in his repertoire, and he has a classical background, and so like the things are starting to get a little bit more prog in a Steely Dan sort of way, like kind of like that tuneful 70s prog. And so the band goes in the studio and records In the Heart of the Young, and this is the album that literally puts them on the map. So in the waning final days of MTV and hair metal, the band comes out with 3 huge hits: Can't Get Enough, Easy Come, Easy Go, and the hit Miles Away, which was written by Rob Taylor or Paul Taylor. And these songs push this band into the stratosphere. So, Carl, talk to me about In the Heart of the Young, because I feel like this is the album where the singles don't even begin to tell you how good of the record it is.
Yeah, it's pretty much everything Wingers does, only like way better. But first off, the singles are great. Miles Away, Easy Come, Easy Go, Can't Get Enough, are great. I don't know if Loosen Up was a single or not, but it really should have been because it's great. But then you get like In the Day We'll Never See, which is just In the Day We'll Never See is kind of like what's that? It's kind of like Gods of War to Def Leppard as like, as it's kind of like that. It's kind of just like not just a riff rock tune, just like a really good solid tune. I don't know whose idea this was though. It's got rap on it, so that's hilarious.
Yeah. Well, there are a couple faulting points, yeah.
But I mean, with the exception of that, it's just everything you got off the first album, just kind of better, a little more varied. That's a little deeper. We're not talking about doing Underage Girls, which is really, really creepy now when we think about it. Because he ain't saying no in that song either. Well, she's 17. The age of consent laws and blah blah blah. But
yeah, okay.
Maybe that's what Can't Get Enough is about. I don't know. But it's great. I can't say enough good things about this one. I don't go back to the self-titled that often. I do like State of Emergency and Time to Surrender.
And Madeline's a solid track.
Yeah, Madeline and Hungry are probably the two hits off of that like I actually care about. But it's still a great riff rock album. This one though, it's a little less riff rock, just freaking awesome either way.
So the band goes on a 13-month world tour and plays everywhere, and there was a ton of shifting tides going on here, but all of these bands that were on tour at the time, Slaughter and Winger and Poison, they didn't seem to really notice. But Winger came back and comes back in 1992, and Atlantic sends them into the studio to make their third record, and it kind of feels like the entire band, the astute musicians that they are completely aware of what's happening. So Winger goes into the studio, and Kip has written, Kip and Reb have kind of hunkered down and written while on the road and wrote when they got back, and kind of just decided, we're just going to do the record we just want to do. We're not going to talk to the record company until it's done. We're not going to sequence it any special way. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to make the record we want, because P.S. nobody's going to buy it. Like, did you just see that Nirvana video? Did you turn on MTV last week? Like, it's over. Like, it's over. We get it. We're okay with it. So the band goes into the studio and makes Pool. Now, Carl, we could do a whole podcast on this. We might do a whole podcast on this. Pool is like the difference between In the Heart of the Young and the self-titled, the band had grown, but this is that growth, like, to the nth degree. So it's heavier than anything they've done. It's more soulful than anything they've done. It has more depth than anything they've done. The lyrics are 100%, deep social commentary. Even the love songs are in a much more adult sense. There's no concessions of any kind. There's no artistic concessions of any kind. This album is what many people considered the defining album for Winger, and it came out, and the 40 people that were still into hair metal, that didn't care, about what was popular or not, went and bought it and were like, holy crap. And Winger went on a quick tour, and that was it. And I want you to talk to me about this album, since this was the album that kind of got you into them, and explain to me why it's such an amazing album, even though it didn't have a single hit on it.
Yeah, so this, I don't know how we define hit. I know Down Incognito was like
it was a single, but it definitely didn't get played.
Yeah, so the thing I love the most about this album is that everybody at some point really kind of changed what they did. Winger is like one of the few bands that didn't. They, Kip dug his heels in for like riff rock.
Yeah, it's not a grunge album.
No. It's just like the first album was like cheesy riff rock, right? The second one was a little deeper, more introspective, maybe a little more eclectic. I don't know if that's the right word. But this one, they're like, no, we're just going to go back to like crazy, like straight riff rock. We're going to make it harder. And we're going to make the solos more solo-y. And everything just sound like just chunkier, which is essentially what it is. It's like probably one of the best rock albums I've ever heard. This is amazing. I love it. Just every track on here is a winner. It's one of like the few like perfect 10s. This is probably their best album. Which kind of says a lot. and it's great. I think there was a what was there like a video accompanying this, like making a part of the album, like you could get for a bit.
I have it.
You do have. I think I watched it with you. But yeah, produced wonderfully, recorded great. Reb Beach and Rod Morgenstein are, again, they're awesome. Cannot get enough of Winger's Pull.
So the thing I'll note right off the top is what you said about the production. Pull sounds amazing. You know, in 1993, if you played this and you played Stone Temple Pilots' Core, you would notice a lot of similarities in the production. So that Winger had made a current sounding album in 1993. You know, they made a record. It wasn't a grunge album, but I mean in terms of the sonics, you know, like the guitars were heavier.
Yeah, dry by 80s standards, heavier.
Exactly. It sounded current, but they were playing their music. And I think that really, you know, for a young teenager like myself, I didn't see the difference. I loved Soundgarden, and I loved Pearl Jam, and I loved Winger, and these records all sounded the same. You know, the thing that hit me right off the top was, you know, especially in sections of Blind Revolution, Mad, and Junkyard Dog, the band had found a way to kind of take the two extremes that they do, kind of the 12-string acoustic, really like airy stuff that Winger writes, that Kip would write, and then these super heavy, like smashing, like chunks of like almost metal, but like you said, riff rock, and kind of combining them together. And both of those songs are super progressively tinged. The ballads, you know, Lucky One, Who's the One, Spell I'm Under, just a cut above what they had been doing on the other records. And then, you know, No Man's Land, In for the Kill, Like a Ritual. I mean, each one of these songs just heavy, tuneful, lots of meaty sections, you know, progressively tinged. Like you said, Reb's playing, the solos are just insane. And this record, they did as a three-piece. You know, Paul had kind of left the fold, so it was really just Kip and Reb now, and this is kind of the partnership you're going to see going forward for the rest of their career. Do you have a favorite song off of Pool?
That's really hard.
Or is it just, it's a perfect 10 from start to finish?
It is, but I do have preferences. Aside from being a little cheesy, Like a Ritual is fantastic.
Oh, great song. The whole drum thing.
Honestly, I'm going to say... Yeah, I know. I think the best track on this album is Lucky One.
Ooh.
Oddly enough, it's one of the few times I'll go with the lighter track being my favorite, but that's probably my favorite track on the album.
Yeah, I mean, Kip's vocals are otherworldly. So, like I said, the band would go on a quick tour, and then they kind of folded up house. That, you know, there was no outstanding record company obligations, or if there was, the record company wasn't interested in another record. You know, so the band kind of went their own ways. Reb would go on and do tons of session work. He'd play with Dokken. He'd play with everybody. Rod Morgenstein, you know, that dude, he'd go back. He was a professor. You know, he
did the Jelly Jam
exactly,
with
yeah.
What's his name from King's X?
Ty Tabor.
I can't remember his name. Yeah, that guy's awesome. Yeah. Dixie Dregs, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, so Rod just plays with everybody, and Rod's like one of those musicians that he plays with people, and then he kind of never they never lose his card. You know, like Rod is just he's just a cut above and a super consummate professional. So they were all going back to work, is basically what I'm saying. And Kip, you know, would spend the next few years kind of riding artistic highs, but in anonymity. You know, he released This Conversation Seems Like a Dream in 1997. I actually went and bought this the day it came out. Have you ever heard this record, Carl?
I have not. You played it for me once, and I've seen some live clips from it. I've never thoroughly heard it. I actually, in preparing for this, tried to find
it's not on
like
Apple
a way
Music.
to listen to it. No, I think we decided to do this one kind of last minute. It's like I couldn't download it, and I couldn't buy it from somewhere in time to get it. But you've played it for me, and I remember, well, at least the one, and I remember thinking it was. I remember liking it, but I don't remember much about it.
Well, and I won't talk too much about these because they're not really, they're just kind of part of the Winger story. Kip Winger's first solo record, This Conversation Seems Like a Dream, in a lot of ways it's like certain elements of Pool. So Rod Morgenstein plays drums on this, and Kip's playing bass, and he's got Andy Timmons, you know, playing guitar, so another session guy. So there's no Reb, so it's not riff rock. But if you like, you know, Lucky One, and you like Spell I'm Under, and you like Who's the One, this record sounds like those songs from Pool, but just more of them. And the thing I'll say is, if we're going to be ranking albums, This might be my favorite Kip Winger CD that he's played on, even above Pool. These songs are
really.
It's Carl. It's some of his. It might be his most focused writing of his entire career. He left Winger, and it kind of like he didn't know what he wanted to do, but he kept writing. And this record
didn't really like leave. It just kind of like stopped. I mean, because he is Winger.
Exactly. So he puts this out. And he started doing solo acoustic shows. So the songs are more acoustic by nature, but there's still like those progressive tinges. There's still some heavier moments on the record. The song "Steam" is one of the best rockers that Kip Winger's ever played. Daniel, "Naked Sun," "Don't Let Go." These are like some of my favorite Winger songs. So anybody who's listening to this, if you haven't heard this record, it's not available for streaming right now, but it's definitely worth tracking down. It is followed by tragedy. So, Kip, his wife, who he had married in the early 90s, who he actually writes a lot of the songs on this first record about, or at least they seem like they're about her, she dies in a car accident in 1996. So, any thoughts of Winger getting back together were kind of shelved because he kind of goes on a soul-searching journey, goes overseas, travels, and eventually releases a second solo record, Songs from the Ocean Floor, in 2000. Now, again, this record, when it came out, it was available only by mail. Like you had to send in a check to his website or record company back in 2000, which I did, and I got this record in the mail. And it's a little different. I won't say it's not as good as This Conversation Seems Like a Dream, but it's even more acoustic, and it's very dark, as you would expect. A lot of it dealing kind of with the thought of like losing. I mean, guy's in his mid-30s. He's a former, rock star, riding high, top of the world, got all the money in the world. His wife goes out to get groceries and dies. Like, he's literally living a movie, like a horrible movie, like one of those horrible stories. So, and it's not something that was really talked about. It wasn't really reported because nobody cared about Kip Winger in 1996. So this record, again, well worth checking out, well worth listening to. Same thing. Rod Morgenstein's playing drums, Andy Timmons on guitar. So it's that Winger sound, but just very acoustic, very dark. Great record. Probably Kip's best lyrics of his entire career on this record. And this entire time, throughout this period, Kip's playing solo acoustic shows. There's a live solo record that is available on Apple Music for streaming called Down Incognito, which features live.
That one I have heard.
Yes, and it's essentially the first half is live acoustic versions from his touring. And then the last 5 songs in there are actually tracks taken from his first solo record, and they're just like remixed to just be acoustic songs. So if you like those songs, the versions on his solo record have like drums and electric guitars and stuff. So kind of a cool thing. So Carl, that essentially encapsulates like an 8-year period and brings it all back. So the guys decide to start playing some one-off shows and festivals, and holy crap, in 2004, 2005, people are like all about it. Wouldn't you know that Poison's going out and playing summer tours and selling out sheds? It's kind of like all of a sudden it's okay to like hair metal again, or all the people that liked it are now 35 and want to go back and relive their youth. So Winger decides to get together and records the 4 album. So tell me about 4. Tell me about what this return from Winger means.
Yeah, 4 is different because it kind of has like a more modern sound to it, like sonically. But again, Kip kind of just sticks with riff rock. Only it just happens to be a little bit darker, maybe a little more political. Still has solos, still has the riffs, but just albeit just a bit darker. You got the M16 song, the Can't Take It Back, the very cheesy Generica. But for the most part, it's a solid album. I'm not going to say it's as good as Pull, but I really enjoy listening to it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, so the band in 2001, Atlantic Records put out a best of compilation, which had an extra track left over from Pull, which was called On the Inside. Had you heard that? Have you heard that song?
Oh, it's awesome. I actually, on the... back when I had CDs, I had a burned version of Pull that I put On the Inside on.
Yeah, so On the Inside was amazing, like so good. And I remember at the time when that compilation came out, telling the nobody that I knew who liked Winger that, like this song's amazing, and it just like, why is this band not making records right now? Like, what's going on? Like, Kip's not touring, everybody's just hunkered down, like Reb's doing Dokken, and that's not any good. Like, what the hell? Like, why? So when I heard that they were in the studio working on this record, and this is back in 2005, I was so excited, man. So this record comes out, and Carl, I loved this. I still love this record. I think it's probably my second favorite Winger record. I think right up ahead, just slams. I love Blue Suede Shoes. I love everything except Generica. It's probably the only throwaway track. And it's not even a bad song. I just don't think it fits the record. But the record is just slamming. And it's, like you said, modern and heavy, but still riff rock. Talk to me about this record. And then more specifically, the tour that follows, We Went and Saw. Kip Winger is 20 years older than he was when this debut record came out. So talk to me about him and his voice and what you noticed about the band.
Very solid. So unlike Mark Slaughter, Winger did a couple smart things. You can kind of tell the tuning's a little different. So they definitely curtailed the tunings to kind of accommodate an older voice. Kip doesn't make many concessions to how he used to sing songs, but he does make a couple, at least from what I was noticing. So, one thing that makes Kip Winger is I think he's very practical. He's done compositions for ballet. He's done a lot of different types of composing and songwriting. He seems definitely kind of to have a point with everything he does. He's very smart. And so the live shows were far and away, they were practically perfect. I think I've seen him. Did we see him once or did we see him
twice? The second time I got a ticket for wearing my seatbelt.
I remember that. And you paid the ticket. I went to court and I fought it, and they threw the ticket out, but the court costs were the same as me paying the freaking ticket.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
It was like the magistrate was insanely annoyed. It was like when I told her what happened, it was like she had heard that story 1,000 times. She didn't even ask me any questions. She's like, okay, you don't have to pay a ticket. The ticket's gone. Just pay the court costs. And I walk out, I pay the court costs, and then I leave. It was insane. Like, who? All right. I don't know. All right. So cops were like staking out a Winger show. A Winger show. It's a bunch of stewards at a Winger show. So they snagged me. I was the one driving. They snagged me for not using a turn signal. And then, just take both of us. We're writing you tickets for not wearing your seatbelts. We're both both of us. Both of us are wearing them. It's freaking quota time, I guess. I don't know. And you know what? The great, fantastic live singing. This album is also, again, practically perfect. I think Generica's a little cheesy, but, aside from that, I don't really have any complaints on it.
So the band... The band goes on tour for 4, and we saw them, and it was amazing. Kip, like you said, his voice sounds perfect. He's got just about all of his range. There's more warmth and depth to it, and the band is just, they go out on stage, and at this point they've got John Roth, who was the touring guitar player from Pool, who took over Paul Taylor's place. He's back in the fold too, so they're playing as a 4-piece, and just everything they do sounds great. It's a great show. They released the demo anthology in 2007 that kind of collects a bunch of odds and sods. It's pretty much for completists only. It's a double disc, but I don't recommend, unless you've got to have unless you're me and you need to have every version of everything Winger's ever done so that you can do a podcast and talk about it someday, you don't need it. And they also relieve a live album and a live DVD in 2007, which kind of chronicled what we're talking about. Just an amazing live show. The band comes back 3 years later with the album Karma. Now, Carl, Winger had figured out that if they did it their way and they did it on their schedule, they can make these records, and a million people aren't going to buy it, but they can make a pretty damn good sounding record just by themselves. So Kip Winger's producing these records too, which is kind of impressive because these records sound amazing. Karma comes out in 2000.
Oh, his production work is fantastic. There's other things he's produced. He produced something with Doug Pinnick, and I want to say a couple
Was it The Mob?
Yeah, was it with a couple guys from Poison or Rat?
Oh, I don't know.
I think Poison. It was great. He's a fantastic sound. Whenever the sound when he produces, which is pretty much 4 and onward, and then anything else, it sounds fantastic.
Well, I guess, and I'm skipping over, I should talk real quickly. In 2008, he releases From the Moon to the Sun, which is his third solo record, or his fourth solo record. It's his third studio. I don't know. I'm looking at the Wikipedia thing. They're wrong. Trust me, I know. So Kip Winger's third solo record, From the Moon to the Sun, it's his best sounding solo record. It's probably better than any of the recent. It's probably the best sounding thing he's ever produced. I like it. I think it's 12 tracks, and I think probably 8 of them are amazing. There's some weird things I'm not so sure. Like he's got a classical piece on it. It's a solo record. You do whatever you want with the solo record. So that's all I'll say about that. But it's great. I definitely recommend checking it out. And then in 2009 they released Karma. Now, Carl, have you heard Karma? What are your thoughts on this record?
I like this one a lot too. It's still got kind of like a darker, I think, tone than Pull, not as much so as 4. But it's Kip's kind of got a certain. He's definitely in a swing of kind of the way his production sounds. So it's very similar. By the way, on the Mob, it was a guy from Night Ranger and a guy from Whitesnake. But
so it was the Mob. Okay.
Yes, it was. Doug Pinnick from King's X, a guy from Night Ranger, and a guy from Whitesnake, and I forgot who else. But so
I remember that being like a really good record too.
It was awesome. I love it. I'd follow Doug Pinnick. That's actually not true. He's done some solo stuff that's just plain stupid sounding, but when he's just doing straight rock, it's great. But no, Karma is fantastic. Got a song on it called "Pull Me Under." Not at all like Dream Theater's "Pull Me Under," but it's actually pretty good. I think most of this album's pretty solid. I could probably do without like I don't know. I don't think I was like a huge fan of Come a Little Closer, but for the most part, it's good. I mean, you've got again. Beach, Kip Winger, it's fantastic. Yeah,
Red Beach, I can't say enough about him. And when you watch, and it's probably on YouTube, the making of these albums, especially the making of 4, they kind of chronicled the process, and it's basically Reb and Kip get together at his house and kind of track together and write together. And these two, for better or worse, they've had ups and downs, but they are brothers through and through. And you just see that, like, when they're together, the rapport is just insane, and to watch them kind of create together, it's kind of awesome. And I think most musicians wish to have something like that when they're working or creating with somebody. And I know all of the band members, especially Kip, have been very vocal about at this point they are doing this for the last 10 years. They've been doing Winger just because they like each other so much. Like it's like hanging out with your friends, and the fact that people are paying to come see them and download these records is just icing on the cake. My thoughts on Karma are this. I like Karma. I don't like it as much as 4, but I think I like the lyrical content in 4 was a bit more serious, and I think songs like Stone Cold Killer and Deal with the Devil, which are more in line with early Winger, like, In the Heart of the Young and the self-titled, I think that's what the majority of fans are probably more into, that kind of Motley Crue, almost like sleazy, 80s rock thing. So, this record, like songs like Pull Me Under and Supernova, are songs that I think stand out, whereas songs like Stone Cold Killer or Feeding Frenzy, they don't really do as much for me. It's a good record. I just don't find myself going to it like I go to 4. But I can't say that it's bad. The band would then go on tour, and essentially, the next couple of years they stay hunkered down and kind of on hiatus while Kip does his Ghost project, which is he composes and has a suite of music recorded. Now, Carl, I don't really know anything about classical music. You know a lot more than me. Have you listened to any of his classical music?
No, and I think the Ghost thing, it was to accompany. I thought that was the one that was going to accompany a ballet.
It did accompany a ballet, and I don't know anything about ballet either. So
I think he was either nominated for or won an award for that.
He was nominated for a Grammy.
Yeah, and he then did something else like In Spirit Of, or like a suite of music inspired by like another ballet composer, I think. So anyway, I haven't heard it. I know about it, and I read up on some of it. It's just, from following general news and information. I've not heard it. I don't know much about classical music. I just know that, some things catch my ear, and but nope, have not heard it. I don't know anything about ballet either. I have no idea what it sounds like.
Well, I did listen to it a couple times, and it sounded great, but like I don't have a point of
Did
comparison.
it make you want to pirouette?
I see. I don't even know what that. I guess I just it sounds great to me, and I think it's more of one of those things that it's like, Carl, if you made an equation that solved some sort of esoteric idea and you showed it to me, I would be in awe of your genius, but it would completely go over my head because I am just a chimpanzee, and I'm just sitting here swinging my crap at people. I don't know anything about any of that classical stuff, but I do want to highlight that this period of time, and it's been a while now. It's been in the rearview mirror for a handful of years, but 2006 to 2009, saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 total releases for Kip Winger. I mean, like he was a very busy guy. He got together with his brother and reformed his childhood band Blackwood Creek, and they released a record in 2009, which is cool, kind of like rootsy Americana rock. Again, if anybody's interested, check it out. It sounds great. And P.S., anything Kip Winger sings on is worth probably checking out if you like his voice. He does the classical thing. He gets his ballet on, and then 2014 sees the band come back to fold with Better Days Comin'. Now, this most recent album, it kind of came out of nowhere. And Carl, when I first heard the single Rat Race, which was the lead-off single for it, I was kind of like, huh? It just seemed like a cheesy, almost dumb song to me, and it was heavy and rocked, but then I heard the song Tin Soldier, and all was good. I realized that this band had come up with another great album. Do you have thoughts on Better Days Comin'?
Yeah, this is the one actually for me that's more hit or miss. Like Queen Babylon, Tin Soldier, I think are cool. Midnight Driver of a Love Machine, I think is stupid.
Yeah.
And So Long China, I kept thinking he was saying So Long China. No joke. That's what I thought it was. And is he coming out of the closet and just saying so long and we're going to see you again? I have no idea, but it turns out it's So Long China. I don't know. I'm 50-50 on this one. But it's still, but here's the thing though. Even on Karma, it's all Reb Beach is almost giving us better lead work on Karma than he's done anywhere else, and his work on this one is pretty freaking solid too.
Yeah, I think the thing that was interesting is this album came out, so Karma and this album have the exact same logo. The covers are very similar, but Karma has this kind of black cover, and Better Days Comin' is the same color but inverse. So I felt like right off the top you knew it was going to be cut from the same cloth, and production-wise, the records sound very similar. I kind of agree that, this song has, Queen Babylon, Tin Soldier, even So Long China, I think are great tunes. But then, yeah, Rat Race or Be Who You Are Now, don't do anything for me. And it's kind of a mixed bag. I think between the two records, Karma and Better Days Comin', I come up with one really amazing record. That's probably one of my favorites, but both of them are just a little spotty. But I think at this point that Kip and Reb are just going to kind of do what they want when they get together to record, and I think that's awesome. At this, you don't owe anybody anything. Do what you're going to do, and I think that the future, if they're going to kind of continue to write and record in this way, I'm on board. So I think this second half of their career has been very interesting, and Kip himself has been, it's just been super cool to see how productive he has stayed. Now, Carl, it sounds like, from an interview I just listened to probably 3 months back with Eddie Trunk, it sounds like Kip has been spending the last couple years composing more and also putting on more live performances of his compositions, whether it's the ballet or even scoring more music. So, Winger's been kind of hunkered down. Do you have thoughts? What do you want to see them do next? Do you want more Winger music?
I would like to see them try, because, Karma and Better Days Comin' were kind of a similar direction. I wouldn't mind seeing them go maybe a slightly different direction, but at this point, I would take anything that Winger gives us, to be frank with you. And everybody's getting up there in age. Maybe, everybody's going to make choices as to whether they do this tour or that. To be frank with you, I wouldn't mind just seeing them live again. Maybe another solo effort. So I don't know. I guess I'm always going to be curious as to what is he going to do next, and I'm always going to think, dang, I just want to know what that is, and I'm going to check it out no matter what.
So Yeah, I'm on board too. So the classical record that he released was the Conversations with Nijinsky, which was what came out I think last year. But again, and I remember listening to it on Apple Music, and because I think that was also nominated for a Grammy, and great. I mean, it sounds awesome, but it's classical music, and I guess it's just not. I would love another solo record from Kip. I can't stress enough that the 3 solo records are so worth checking out. If you like Winger, if you like the Pool era of Winger, you will love his first solo record. It is a lost gem that just never really got the promotion it needed. Let's talk a little bit about the controversy. So, specifically Beavis and Butthead. You mentioned the Nothing Else Matters video, the Metallica video where Kip Winger's face is on a dartboard. What do you think that was all?
I think I read Rob Zombie once reciting a story where he saw Kip Winger crying at a bar that his career was ruined by Beavis and Butthead. I don't know if he actually said that or if it's just a rumor that's something that I don't know if Rob Zombie actually recited that story, if it was just a rumor, but that's another thing that I heard on the rumor mill.
Yeah, and all of this stuff, I think anybody who's ever read or listened to an interview with Kip Winger knows he is a confident, self-assured man that is not in need of anybody else's approval. It doesn't seem bothered by any of it. But what do you think? Was it just they were the right band at the right time and kind of became a lightning rod? I mean, I kind of feel like a band like Poison was way more comical than Winger, and it's just interesting that they're the band that became the lightning rod. What do you think that was all about, and do you think it was fair?
Oh, it was all Beavis and Butthead, and I don't know if it's fair or not fair. I mean, people are free to be as whimsical with their musical preferences as they want. I think it's odd that I'm supposed to like Def Leppard and I'm supposed to think Poison is awesome, but I'm somehow supposed to think Winger is stupid. That's weird. It's just weird how people's musical preferences went, and it seems like that's all kind of equalized.
Unless it's not nearly what it was.
Yeah, unless you're AC/DC or Guns N' Roses or Def Leppard, everybody, your Slaughters, your Poisons, your Rats, your Wingers, everybody's kind of at the same level now, for the most part. Anyway, so, what goes around comes around, but I don't know if it was fair. I'm not exactly sure his career was necessarily ruined because I'm not sure how much traction going into the 90s the band would have had, Beavis and Butthead or no Beavis and Butthead. It might not have been uncool, to listen to them, but I don't think in that time frame people were going to flock to their concerts any more than they were going to for Poison or Rat.
I completely agree. Yeah. So the band, I'm assuming will definitely return, and this last 10 years has been it's been kind of a cool full circle. The band had an amazing initial run, and then they kind of very quietly left the party before the fight broke out. And then came back the next day and decided to, play in the pool. And it's just ever so cool and classy of them that their timing has been impeccable. And this run of records and touring, I think it's just been kind of one of those things that if you want to find an example of how a band can age gracefully, especially a band that isn't of the, on the same level as like the Rolling Stones or Metallica, if you want to find a working band that can age gracefully, you can't find a better example than Winger. God, I hope that when I'm 55, I'm Kip Winger. I just can't think of a cooler, just been a cool guy, and all the kind of personal stuff he's overcome. I mean, can you imagine your wife dying and then somehow figuring out and being the butt of, jokes and being just commercially unviable and nobody wants to touch you, and just kind of hunkering down and being like, you know what? That's okay. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to build a studio. I'm going to make my own music. It's okay. I'm going to figure this out. I mean, and I don't know, because he hasn't really, I've never read an interview where he's talked about it in depth, but, Kip Winger, if you're listening, I would love to hear your part of this story or that part of the story. And I can't think of something that, it feels like such an inspirational thing, especially the way he's kind of guided his career through all of that. Do you have a favorite Winger album, or even better, do you want to rank them?
If I were to rank them, I'm going to probably do Pull, In the Heart of the Young, 4, the self-titled, Karma, Better Days Coming.
Wow. Yeah, that's... Oh, if I'm going to rank them, I'm definitely putting Pool at the top.
Yes.
Because that record is just... I'm going to put Kip's This Conversation Seems Like a Dream as 1A, because I think it's kind of like the second half of Pool for me. And when I listen to when I listen to Pool, I kind of just listen to that all as one swath of music. I would put number 4 second. In the Heart of the Young, number third. I'd probably put Better Days Coming, the self-titled, and then Karma, but they're really interchangeable. I kind of feel like that first album and these last two are all kind of that same ilk, kind of the more faster, sleazy, simpler rock. I mean, they're more varied than that, but that's kind of in my head where I sit them. Do you have a favorite Winger song?
Favorite Winger song? Out of the whole catalog, it might be In the Day We'll Never See.
That's a great tune, man.
It's not my favorite album, but it's probably my favorite individual song that they have, which is... That's hard because Lucky One's really good too.
It's a great tune.
But yeah, I gotta go with In the Day We'll Never See. That's probably my favorite individual tune.
In the ring, I have in the right corner, Rainbow in the Rose, weighing in at a whopping, I've listened to it 450 times. And in the right corner, I've got Junkyard Dog weighing in it. I've also listened to it 450 times. And these, I think those two songs encapsulate everything I like about the band. So I'm going to cheese out and just say that I like them both, and that those would be good examples. Do you have a favorite performance for each member? What's your favorite Reb solo? What's your favorite Rod Morgenstein drum song?
Here's the thing with Reb Beach and Rod Morgenstein is Kip utilizes drums in a very like in the pocket kind of fashion. Yeah. It's really hard for me to narrow down.
He doesn't overplay. That's the thing.
He really doesn't. And here's the thing. This is what makes Rod Morgenstein so great is that, you know, if you've heard a variety of different things that he's done, which I have, you know that he can be what he needs to be, which is, I think, the hallmark of any good drummer, especially any drummer that kind of gets bounced around. It's hard for me to nail. It's hard for me to nail like my favorite performance for him. Lucky One's easily my favorite Kip performance. And in the Day We'll Never See is easily my favorite Reb performance.
Oh wow, okay.
With a 3-man band, he only picked like 3 songs in total, I guess, and then it's hard for me to nail down a Rod Morgenstein one though.
Yeah, I think with Kip, you know, his vocals have been so solid over the years, and he does such a good job of pouring. Like Lucky One is like just the vocal performance. I don't know that it's the most clever or catchiest song I've ever heard, but God, just to hear him sing the way he sings on it, it's such a cut above for that reason. I think that Pool right. does have, I mean, his vocals, it's kind of the perfect mix of, he's still got his youthful like range, but his voice had really filled out at that point, and he really just nails like the emotion on a lot of those songs. I really like Blind Revolution Mad. I think the kind of the opening and the quiet acoustic and the way it builds, like he vocally nails that entire song. Reb, man, his solo, like the outro solo in Headed for a Heartbreak, is so cool and jazzy. I freaking love that song. I love his solo. Morgenstein, you might be right. I kind of tempted to say Junkyard Dog for the same reason that I was talking about Kip. He kind of does everything that song needs. But God, I mean, I can't. Is there a song where one of them is just kind of like farted on it? No, I mean, there's just can't say enough.
I kind of want to change my Reb Beach pick to Blind Revolution Mad. His solo in that is
great,
crazy.
Yeah, it's a great solo.
Yeah, solo in that one,
and it's brief. You know, like that's the other thing. Like their excursions, you know, Dream Theater goes for a run and you see them 4 hours later and they've run around the city. You know, these guys, they go for a run down to the corner and then they're back, you know, with the goods. So, you know, you can just, you know, I'll be gone for the commercial, but I'll be back. And I think that's kind of, as we've gotten farther along in this boat of, you know, life, I've realized Man, I'm really waxing poetic here. So I realized that, like, I think that, less is more, even with that kind of stuff. So yeah, Reb's solos are always tasteful. The guy can play. He can overplay when he needs to, but he rarely does. Kip can oversing when he needs to, but he rarely does. Do you have any parting thoughts or final thoughts on Winger and what they've meant to you?
They don't really mean anything to me aside from they're just awesome tunes. The thing that I like about Winger is that they haven't really had an influence on practically anything I do.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean this in the sense that, I wasn't listening to them in my formative years of anything. I didn't get into them until I was a young adult.
True.
They haven't really creeped their way, except maybe drumming. Maybe like that, hey, hold it back a bit. Sometimes it works better. But they don't. But that's a lesson you can get from anybody. When I listen to Winger, I'm really just listening to it just to enjoy it and just to listen to it. And I am such like a critic. Like in my head, I'm critiquing everything. And the more like connected to something I am, is the more I do that, which oftentimes is the less that I can actually enjoy something.
Oh, really? That's an interesting idea. So does it evolve over time, that issue with you?
I wouldn't necessarily call it an issue. I just think it's always been how I've been. I really like Stone Temple Pilots' Purple. I think it's one of the best produced rock albums I can think of. And when I listen to it these days, I'm really listening to things about it that I just are not musical. I think I've heard Pull about as many times as I've heard Purple. But when I'm listening to Purple, I'm just listening to it for different reasons. I'm thinking like, hey, I wrote a song like that. Well, how can I make my production sound like that? What's going on there? And like my brain is just fixated on something else. And which my brain does that. I've got a great story about an amazingly attractive girl that I was about to have sex with once. This is a great story. This is like the tragedy of how my brain works sometimes. So we're in my bedroom and like we're really getting to it. And she's probably like a girl hotter, like just a hotter girl, like one of the hottest girls I dated in my youth. And at some point, there's some disinterest like washing over my brain. I can't even tell you why. Well, I can't exactly tell you why. I just can't tell you why my brain does this. But so if she gets like really upset, right? And everything stops and she looks at me and she says, "What?" And I'm like, "What? What do you mean what?" She's like, "What?" I'm like, "Well, nothing." She's like, "No, not nothing. Like what?" And I'm like, "You really want to know? Don't ever say that to a person. Like don't ever say that to her. When the girl already knows, don't ever say what you really want to know." She's like, "Yeah, I want to know what." I'm like, and what? So there was a radio on at the time, and something off of, I forgot the hit, but the hit off of Def Leppard's Adrenalize was playing. And I was like, my mind just wandered. She's like, "To what?" I'm like, "I don't understand why the snare drum on Adrenalize has to sound so loud and so stupid." And she was so pissed, and I don't blame her. I was pissed, and we didn't never see each other again after that. But it was. That's just how my brain works.
Adrenalize, you cost.
I hear a snare.
Wow.
I don't know, and so that's just how my brain works sometimes. So the nice thing about listening to something like Winger is like I'm not listening for that stuff. It's just I'm into it because I'm into it. It doesn't creep in anything else I do, and so I there's a lot of music like that I'll go to when if I'm at work and I want to listen to something, but I also want to work. I'm not trying to have my brain overwork. I just want to enjoy something, or I'm doing yard work, or I'm just sitting around wanting to listen to something. It's perfect for me for that. That's kind of what what Winger, I guess, means to me.
Well, that's a great story. I will tell you that there is a reason I do not listen to music when that is getting ready to go on, because I have a similar problem. And I have been guilty of times. It's why I can't have a TV on in the background. I'm easily distracted, and it's not that.
Yeah, if something like Spaceballs came on in the middle of the act would be over. The first joke.
Well, and it's I like to think it's not that I'm disinterested. God, Lord knows I am as interested in women as I have ever been. I was 5 years old and I was crushing on the first girl. I've been pretty much trying to nail chicks since I could walk. But that being said, I also love music. I might love music more, to be honest with you, if I had to choose. So
Yeah.
if given the choice, if I'm in your shoes, I'm in bed and clothes are flying off and something catches my ear, it will pull every single time it will pull my attention, if not for a brief moment, because I just can't help it. And that's, and there will come a point in time when, I'm an old man and nothing works but my ears. So
That's hopefully.
Well,
hopefully, I got a rattle in my one ear, and sometimes I think it would be a dang shame if that got bad.
So I'm choosing the mistress that isn't going to leave me when I'm old and gray, and that is music. So, I can't think of anything better to say. I love Winger. For anybody who's listened to this podcast, I implore you, listen to Pool. If you've never listened to Winger before, if your thoughts of Winger are 17 and heading for a heartbreak, you're doing yourself a disservice. And if you like hard rock of any flavor, even the more current Winger albums, there's probably something on there for you. And, great live band if you can check them out. And if you like classical music, check out Kip's classical stuff and tell me if it's any good, because I have no idea, but it sounds great to me. Carl, why don't you tell everybody how they can let us know their thoughts on Winger?
Yeah, they could go to Twitter and search Geek USA podcast. You'll find us. You can send us an email, geekusa_podcast at gmail.com. No, that's just straight Geek
no
USA
underscore in the
at
email.
Gmail. Geek USA podcast at gmail.com. If you go to Twitter, it's geekusa_podcast is how, I guess, the best way to find us.
Yeah, and if you email us, let us know what is your favorite Winger album and why. And if anybody listening has any thoughts on those solo Kip Winger albums, please email, because I'm still trying to find a person who has heard any of them, because I've been searching my whole life. And I am apparently the only nerd that went to the record store back in 1994 or whatever it was released and bought that Kip Winger solo record. So whatever. I'm still listening to it. It's great. And Kip, if you're listening, we'd love to talk to you. So we will clear our schedules.
Yeah.
Just call in.
Any member of Winger is free to promote anything with us anytime.
Yeah, if you want to promote, your afternoon watch list on Netflix, if you want to promote your grocery store list, whatever it is, just call us up. And if you want to co-host the podcast with us, please give us a shout out. So. I have a feeling that Red Beach would be the ultimate co-host, because I feel like he's got the best stories, and he's toured with pretty much every band we talk about or have talked about. So, definitely got good.
That's hard. That would be really hard. Because Kip is such a musically smart person, and obviously he made all the albums. And I think that if there's one person I want to talk about, tell us these stories. Just tell us stories about how the Winger albums and what happened when the Winger albums were being made. I would kill for him to do another making of their next album while every second. That being said, got to interview Rod. He's done so much with so many musicians that I like. Yeah, I love King's X to death. He's worked with Jordan Rudess. He's just worked with everybody. So many geek things that he's worked with. Between the three of them, if you had to pick which of the three you'd want to interview, I honestly don't. I couldn't do it. I'd have to get a dice and just have it a 3-sided dice and just roll it. Thank you for listening to Geek USA. Follow us on Twitter at Geek USA Podcast.
don't know. Those are my parting thoughts. Real quick, have you heard about this Mike Portnoy supergroup, Sons of Apollo? Did you read it?
Yeah, they announced that real recently, but there's no demo of anything leaked, right?
Just a video with like a minute of snippets.
Right.
And
right. No, I know it's what, like October?
Yeah.
late what is it? Like later? No. Yeah, like later this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So no, I heard about it. I'm super interested. I love to hear it. Absolutely. I love the fact that so Portnoy. Oh, well, here's the thing. When I think of like metal, right? I don't think of like a group like where you take like, you know, Portnoy, Sheehan, and Derek Sherinian, and you're just like, you're gonna make metal. I don't hear that when I hear those three, but like Soto, and what is it, that other the Bumblefoot guy?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like this could be great. I would love to hear Sherinian all over like a hard, just like a straight hard metal album. I would love to hear that.
And I mean, that was, you can barely tell because it's just like 5-10 second clips strung together, but it sounded like the heavier moments of Falling into Infinity. You know, like Sherinian's just the way he plays synth and the patches he uses, locked in with Mike's drums. Obviously, the guitar playing's great. Sheehan, I'm not a huge fan of his bass playing, but whatever, it's bass. Like, it's bass and it's prog metal, so whatever. It's fine. It's just a lot of twiddly D's. And Soto's an interesting vocalist. I think I like the idea that you're gonna go with somebody who isn't anything like James. You know, like a completely different type of vocalist. I was so worried they were gonna get Russell Allen, and I just don't dig that dude's voice, his macho.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about his voice that I don't like.
Because he's a great singer. I'm not denying that. It's not anything for me. So
I can't. I don't have a practical. It doesn't catch my ear in a way that I want to listen to. But like when I listen, I'm like, this dude's really freaking good. I don't know what my problem is.
Yeah. So from what I've heard, the video, it's super super cool. Thoughts on the name Sons of Apollo?
I don't have a thought on it because you know what? It's a prog metal band. I don't even know if the names matter.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. Yeah, exactly. Because they could have called it, you know, 5 Little Turds in the Toilet. And we're gonna check it out because it's Mike Portnoy, you know, like, so.
Yeah, that's true.
So very very excited, very cool.
Didn't Jeff? Didn't Soto, whatever we're saying? Didn't he also do? Didn't he also do it for Journey sometime? Like
he was in the band for like 6 months. I mean, he didn't play on any records, and he wasn't. I think it was just in between Jerry, if I remember correctly, kind of falling by the wayside. Dean Castronavo actually sang a little bit from the drum kit too for Journey. Those were weird times for them. But he's been a journeyman. You know, people love the Yngwie record he played on or he sang on. That I don't know anything about Yngwie. I can't get past the first notes. So, but you know, I like his voice. I like his look. I like the fact that, you know, all the musicians are kind of the same age. I was a little worried that he'd go out and get some young buck and then it would just kind of be like a one-off because it's not going to work or they're not going to be able to stick together. And I think that, you know, the idea behind the band obviously is that Mike wants to kind of maybe have the same control he had in Dream Theater, kind of drive the ship a little bit. And I like that. I really liked, you know, the direction that band went when he was in it. And I think that it's time for him to kind of, you know, come home to progressive rock a little bit and maybe be in the driver's seat. And I'm just super jazzed. I think if it's anything like what I'm imagining with, you know, Sherinian being a principal songwriter and Portnoy kind of like probably more from the production side of things, it's going to be awesome and definitely worth a listen.
Slick.